Have you ever noticed how life begins to align the moment you release your pursuit? How the moments you stop forcing, stop striving, stop chasing, the universe itself seems to respond, not with noise or drama, but with subtle, almost imperceptible shifts that ripple through the fabric of your daily existence. Some people spend their lives running after validation, attention, love, and recognition, yet they never pause to witness the quiet truth that energy is magnetic, and when unbound by desperation, it naturally attracts what is already meant to come. This is the first law of vibrational detachment. When you release, you receive. When you stop pushing, the currents of life begin to carry you toward what is aligned. Carl Jung spoke often of the invisible forces that govern human interaction, the interplay of the conscious ego and the shadow, the unseen threads that pull one toward another, the deep unconscious patterns that are mirrored in desire and projection. To understand why ceasing to chase creates magnetism, one must first recognize how attachment fractures energy. The act of pursuit, though often unconscious, is a form of subtle tension. It broadcasts need, longing, and incompleteness into the world. The ego says, "I want this," but the soul whispers, "I am enough." And it is in the quiet whisper, in the measured restraint of being, that the truest power emerges. Observe how some of the most magnetic individuals you have known, perhaps someone who has touched your life and left an indelible impression, have never asked for attention. They do not speak of desire. They do not plead or negotiate presence. They simply exist, fully inhabiting their inner reality. And the world, inevitably, takes notice. This is not accident. This is the principle of energetic sovereignty. The moment one claims themselves fully, detachment transforms into attraction, and others, whether consciously or unconsciously, are drawn in, compelled to align with the energy they cannot yet fully comprehend. It is not merely about charm or strategy. It is a deeper, metaphysical law rooted in the very psychology Jung explored. He described the anima and animus as internal archetypes, reflections of the unconscious projected outward into relationships. When one carries completeness within, there is nothing to project that needs fulfillment from another. When the self is whole, one's presence ceases to chase, and yet others inevitably pursue, drawn not by manipulation, but by resonance. This is the quiet revolution of energy. It is the unforced current of authenticity, the gravity of completeness, the invisible signal of self-possession. Consider how human relationships often falter when energy is imbalanced. When one pursues too earnestly, too transparently, too anxiously, desire is replaced by tension. Men and women alike can feel this subtle imbalance, and it triggers resistance, recoil, or, in some cases, confusion. The chase, though culturally romanticized, often diminishes attraction. Jung would suggest that what the ego desires is not always what the soul truly needs. What the shadow yearns for may manifest as obsession precisely when the pursuit ceases. When you release the constant pull of attention-seeking, when you no longer invest energy in chasing approval, a curious transformation occurs. What once eluded you begins to emerge naturally and without force. It is here that spiritual wisdom intersects with psychological insight. Stoic philosophy teaches the art of internal sovereignty, the discipline of valuing one's own presence above the fluctuating opinions and desires of the external world. Marcus Aurelius wrote of the serenity that arises when one stands firm in virtue, unaffected by the whims of others. In this same manner, when energy is anchored in wholeness, when the vibration of one's being resonates from a place of clarity, detachment becomes not apathy, but power. It is not that others are coerced into seeking you. It is that they are magnetically drawn to the completeness they intuitively sense, yet cannot create for themselves. This is a subtle but profound truth. People often mistake obsession for desire, longing for love, or persistence for devotion. Yet the individual who does not chase is the one who triggers recognition of absence within others. In this silence, the psyche confronts its own unintegrated shadows. A man may feel a compulsion he cannot name. A woman may notice a pull towards someone who offers no validation. The energy is not external. It is the echo of inner resonance, reflected in the unconscious needs of others. Those who come into alignment are not drawn to desperation. They are drawn to the mirror of wholeness. You, who listen, are invited to consider your own energetic patterns. Are you chasing? Are you bending, stretching, or reshaping your presence to gain attention, affection, or approval? Each subtle act of reaching outward fractures your field of presence, scattering the potency of your own being. Conversely, each act of inward grounding, each moment of self-possession strengthens the magnetic field around you. You do not need to compel attention. You need only to embody alignment, vibrational clarity, and sovereign energy. The effect is profound. The very world begins to reorganize around you, drawing toward you what previously seemed unattainable. This is not about romantic conquest or manipulation. It is not about strategy, performance, or charm. It is about integrity, self-awareness, and the quiet cultivation of presence. Jung spoke often of individuation, the journey toward becoming one's complete self. Individuation requires facing shadow, integrating fragmented aspects of the psyche, and discovering the inner light that does not depend on the reflection of another. When this is achieved, energy naturally ceases to chase, and yet the currents of life conspire to bring what resonates to your orbit. Even the smallest gestures of detachment, pausing in conversation, holding silence instead of responding immediately, choosing to prioritize inner clarity over reactive pursuit, carry weight. The field of energy reacts to such integrity. It is subtle, nearly imperceptible, yet unmistakable. People may feel a shift without knowing why. Men, women, colleagues, friends, lovers, they sense the presence of someone whose energy is sovereign, grounded, and complete. This magnetic resonance is neither aggressive nor manipulative. It is soft, steady, and infinitely compelling. And so, the first stage of this understanding is recognition that attraction, attention, and alignment are not products of pursuit, but of energetic integrity. When you stop chasing, you stop fracturing your presence. When you cultivate detachment rooted in self-possession, you create a field in which life naturally seeks to meet you. This is the secret rhythm that Jung and the ancient philosophers understood. That completeness does not push, does not plead, does not fragment. It simply radiates, and the world adjusts accordingly. there comes a moment in every human life when silence grows louder than effort, when withholding becomes more powerful than offering, when presence carries more weight than pursuit. It is in that moment, sacred, quiet, almost imperceptible, when energy shifts from seeking to knowing. To the untrained eye, nothing hath changed, but beneath the surface, everything hath. The one who once reached is no longer reaching. The one who once bent is no longer bending. The soul that once stretched itself thin to be seen hath returned to center, and in this return, an ancient alchemy takes place. Attention reverses, gravity inverts, and what once pulled away begins to circle back, slowly, hesitantly, irresistibly. People often believe that others grow interested through persuasion, performance, or constant presence. But true attraction is not born from visibility. It is born from absence. Not absence as avoidance, but absence as power. The space you create when you withdraw your effort becomes a mirror in which others must face themselves. Jung spoke of projection, the unconscious act of placing internal desires, fears, and fantasies onto another. When you chase, others do not see you. They see only their own reflection of superiority, control, or certainty. But when you step back, quietly, without bitterness, the projection collapses. They can no longer define you as they once did. And so, in the sudden vacancy, their own shadow appears. This is the beginning of psychological reversal. The one who was pursued may begin to wonder why the energy has shifted. The one who felt desired may feel a sudden void where certainty once lived. They wonder, was I mistaken? Did I misread their affection? Were they never as invested as I believed? In truth, nothing has changed except perception. Yet perception governs emotion, and emotion governs pursuit. Becoming unattached is not a strategy to gain power over others. It is a return to power over the self. It is the conscious decision to reclaim your emotional field from the grasp of external dependency. Yet in doing so, thou dost awaken something primal in those around thee. Men feel it when a woman no longer orients her energy toward them. Women feel it when a man ceases to orbit their validation. Even friends, family, colleagues, all sense it when your identity no longer hinges on response. There is an unspoken hierarchy in every connection. The one who seeks least holds the most power, not in dominance, but in stability. The grounded tree does not chase the wind, yet the wind moves endlessly around it. Stillness is not stagnation, it is command. To cultivate such stillness, one must journey inward, not to empty oneself, but to fill oneself. This inward journey is the essence of Jung's individuation. It is the meeting of self with shadow, the confrontation with the parts of you that once begged to be chosen, seen, validated. Instead of resenting these needs, thou sit with them, thou listen to them, thou integrate them, and slowly, the ache that once drove pursuit transforms into quiet sovereignty. Thou no longer chase, because thou no longer crave what chasing represented, reassurance that you are worthy of being noticed. Notice how the world treats those who no longer seek reassurance. There is something disarming about someone whose energy is settled, not arrogant, not cold, but complete. They do not perform, they do not compete, they do not grasp, and so others instinctively adjust in their presence, lowering their voice, softening their demeanor, offering more than they intended to. They may not understand why, but energetically they feel it. They are standing before someone who does not need, and nothing is more alluring than the absence of need. There will be those who test your detachment. Some will attempt to provoke reaction, not from malice, but from discomfort. They are accustomed to the predictable rhythm of emotional exchange. They give attention, and you respond. They withdraw, and you chase. They create distance, and you collapse. When you stop playing this unspoken game, dissonance emerges. They may push to see if you will return to old patterns. But if your detachment is genuine, rooted not in pride, but in peace, their attempts dissolve. You respond not with reaction, but with presence. Not with resistance, but with stillness. And slowly, the dynamic rebalances. Others may retreat entirely when your energy shifts. They were never aligned with your essence, only with your effort. Let them go. Their exit is not a loss, but a clearing. Energetic detachment reveals what is real and what was only maintained by your constant participation. Those destined to remain will stay, not because you held them, but because your frequency called them. And so, detachment becomes not merely a practice, but a way of being. You no longer grip outcomes. You no longer cling to timelines. You no longer define yourself by how others respond to your presence. Instead, you anchor within. You move with intention. You speak with precision. You love without possession. You give without depletion. You walk forward without demanding that anyone follow. And yet, some will. Not because you asked, but because something in them recognizes the rare beauty of someone who is whole. You become a lighthouse, not a lifeboat. You do not swim into storms to rescue those lost at sea. You remain grounded in your foundation, shining steadily, allowing those who choose clarity to find their way to you. Your role is not pursuit. Your role is radiance. In time, you will see the effects ripple through every part of your life. Opportunities arise where resistance once lived. Connections deepen without effort. People return not because you summoned them, but because your absence awakened what your presence once concealed. And you, who once strained for reciprocation, will simply observe, calm and unshaken, knowing that what is meant will align without force. This is the paradox of energetic detachment. The less you chase, the more you attract. The more silent your presence, the louder your influence. The more you release, the more returns. Not as conquest, not as victory, but as resonance. For what is truly aligned does not need to be seized. It will move toward you when you stand in truth. There comes a stage in the journey of detachment where silence no longer feels like restraint, but like protection. What once felt like discipline now feels like peace. You no longer struggle to withhold your energy. You simply no longer desire to expend it where it is not cherished. The urge to explain fades. The desire to prove dissolves. You do not burn to be understood. You observe who is capable of understanding without demand. At first, detachment required effort. You had to remind yourself not to reach, not to seek, not to chase familiar patterns of validation. But now, something deeper has taken root. You have crossed the threshold from choosing detachment to embodying sovereignty. You no longer suppress reaction. Reaction no longer exists. What once triggered you now drifts past you like wind against a stone. Not because you are numb, but because you are grounded. Your nervous system no longer bends to the uncertainty of others. People sense this shift, not through words, but through the air around you. There is a calmness that does not flinch, a softness that does not submit, a quietness that does not apologize. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are discerning, observing, deciding, The world, for the first time, feels no longer like a maze of approval, but like a landscape of resonance. You give not from depletion, but overflow. You engage not from fear, but from clarity, and in that clarity, you finally recognize what was once obscured by longing. Alignment is not earned, it is recognized. The relationships born from this state feel different. They do not rush. They do not demand. They do not test or confuse. They breathe. They flow. They exist without noise. Conversations are slower. Presence is deeper. You are no longer afraid of silence, for it is no longer emptiness. It is confirmation. Those who remain in your silence are those who were meant to be there. Those who flee were only sustained by your noise. In this phase, thou begin to rewrite what connection means. Attachment is no longer possession. Love is no longer pursuit. Bond is no longer performance. Thou dost not ask, who will stay with me? Thou ask instead, who can sit with me in stillness? For only those who are not disoriented by thy peace can truly walk beside thee. Carl Jung believed that integration of the self leads to true freedom, not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from compulsion. When thou integrate thy shadow, thou no longer seek completion through others. When thou honor thy wounds, thou no longer hand them to others to heal. When thou accept thy solitude, thou no longer use connection as escape. And when thou reach this state, thou realize something profound. Thou hast never been alone. Thou were only disconnected from thyself. From this inner union, your choices evolve. You no longer ask, what do they think of me? But, does this resonate with who I am becoming? You no longer wonder, how do I keep them close? But, do they move with the same integrity as I do? You no longer cling to, what if they leave? Because you finally understand, if they must go, let them. Nothing that exits your life in response to authenticity was meant to stay. Nothing aligned will require the abandonment of self to be sustained. And so, your energy flows differently. You do not give to be seen. You give because your nature is abundant. You do not hold back from fear. You hold selectively from wisdom. You do not chase the unavailable. You stand firm in openness, knowing that what is ready will step forward. Some will call this cold. Others will call it distant. But those who have walked through their own fires will recognize it immediately, not as distance, but reverence. Reverence for your time, your peace, your essence. They will not demand access. They will earn resonance. And they will meet you not with possession, but with presence. For detachment is not disconnection. It is discernment. It is knowing that your worth is not measured by who wants you, but by who respects your stillness. It is no longer asking, am I enough for them? But are they enough for the life I have built within? The world will offer many opportunities to return to your old frequency. Familiar patterns will knock like ghosts at your door. Old dynamics will tempt you with nostalgia, comfort, or illusion. But you now understand. Peace is more intoxicating than chaos. Self-respect is more fulfilling than attention. Solitude with self-trust is richer than company built on uncertainty. And so, as you walk forward, not rushed, not waiting, but simply being, you become the embodiment of a rare truth, that real power is not loud. It does not plead. It does not threaten. It does not chase. It simply is. Let the world feel your absence, where your presence was unappreciated. Let your silence be your final offering. Let your stillness be your boundary, and let your essence draw only those who are capable of holding it. For in the end, the most powerful energy is not the one that shouts to be chosen, but the one that chooses with quiet certainty. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.